Dawn crept over the mist-laden hills of central Ceylon, spilling pale gold across the emerald tea fields. The air carried the fragrance of damp earth, cinnamon, and something less pleasant. Fear. At the crest of the plantation bungalow, a solitary figure stood rigid as stone, his eyes fixed on the lifeless body sprawled beside the veranda steps. The infamous sapphire of Ceylon, a jewel whispered about in legends of old kingdoms, had vanished during the night. Chapter 1. The body on the veranda. The dawn that rose over the central highlands of Ceylon was unlike the soft mornings of Europe. Here, the sky unfolded in molten layers, saffron, amber, rose, spilling their hues over the rolling tea fields like a careless painter's palette. Mist clung stubbornly to the slopes, drifting in pale ribbons across the emerald leaves. As though the earth itself exhaled secrets before the sun could expose them. Hercule Poirot stood at the crest of the hill, having dismissed his motor car a few minutes earlier. He preferred at times to approach a new scene on foot. It sharpened the senses, allowed him to observe the ambience. For murder, though committed by humans, always left a trace upon the very air. Today, the air tasted of damp earth, crushed tea leaves, and fear. A young Sinhalese servant named Peel guided him down the gravel path toward the grand bungalow of the Henbury Tea Estate. His steps were tentative, glancing nervously at the Belgian detective, as though afraid Poirot might deduce guilt merely from the way he breathed. "Sir," Peel said, bowing slightly, "Superintendent Pereira waits for you. The body is still there." Poirot adjusted his white linen suit and flicked a speck of non-existent dirt from his sleeve. "Then let us not keep Monsieur Pereira waiting, I pray you. Lead on." As they rounded the final bend, the bungalow came into view. An impressive colonial structure built on stone foundations, with wide verandas wrapped around it like folded arms. Tall pillars supported the roofing, and carved wooden railings gleamed with recent polishing. Yet despite the building's grandeur, a palpable tension clung to it, visible even from afar. Poirot saw it in the stiff posture of the servants huddled near the entrance. He saw it in the way the pigeons avoided the veranda entirely. And most of all, he saw it in Superintendent Pereira's face, a grim mask carved by years of experience, now sharpened by a fresh, perplexing crime. Pereira stepped forward. "Poirot, thank you for coming so promptly." "It is always a pleasure to assist a friend," Poirot said, "though I confess I wish our reunions were under more cheerful circumstances." Pereira sighed. "We have a body, a very important body." "Ah, the plantation owner, Monsieur Charles Henbury." "Exactly." Pereira gestured toward the veranda steps. And there, lying unnaturally still beneath a white sheet, was the late master of the estate. Poirot approached quietly. The veranda boards creaked beneath his polished shoes, each groan of wood echoing in the morning stillness. A few tea pluckers had gathered at a distance, whispering prayers. The plantation dog lay curled under a chair, tail tucked, whining softly, a creature's instinct recognizing death more quickly than human minds allowed. Pereira knelt and lifted the sheet. Charles Henbury's face emerged, pale, rigid, and contorted in a final grimace. His once vigorous frame was slack, his limbs positioned with unnatural tidiness. Poirot tilted his head. "He has been arranged," he murmured. "You noticed," Pereira said. "I thought so too." Poirot knelt beside the corpse, leaning close without touching. A blow to the skull, delivered with force, but not with frenzy. Perhaps an object of moderate weight, a stone, a tool? Pereira nodded. "That's what we're trying to determine." Poirot examined the collar of the victim's shirt. A faint shimmer, barely visible, yet unmistakable to his meticulous eyes, clung to the fabric. He brushed it with a fingertip and held the residue to the light. "A blue powder," Poirot said. Pereira frowned. "You think it's related to the missing jewel?" Poirot looked up sharply. "Ah, so it is confirmed. The sapphire of Ceylon is gone?" Pereira exhaled heavily. "Stolen from the locked jewel case in Henbury's study. Forced open with precision." Poirot rose slowly, his expression sharpening. "A murder and a jewel theft in the same night, mon ami. You will forgive me, but I do not believe in coincidences, not in matters of this nature." The veranda door creaked open, and a woman stepped out. She was tall, elegant, with raven-black hair pinned neatly beneath a lace mourning veil. Her pale silk robe contrasted strikingly with her dark eyes shadowed not merely by grief, Poirot thought, but by years of quiet disillusionment. "Mrs. Evelyn Henbury," Pereira said softly. She approached with the steady grace of someone accustomed to performing dignity under duress. Yet Poirot detected the trembling of her fingers, tiny betrayals of the emotions she fought to control. "Madame," Poirot said gently, bowing, "my deepest sympathies." Her voice, when she spoke, was measured. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. My husband was not an easy man, but he did not deserve this." Poirot observed her closely. A subtle tension at the jaw. Eyes red but not swollen. She had not wept recently. A composed grief, perhaps, or something else. "Madame," he said, "may I ask, were you awake last night?" She hesitated, a barely perceptible pause. "Yes. I am a light sleeper. I heard voices, perhaps two men, on the veranda." "Men," Poirot repeated. "Did you recognize either voice?" Her gaze drifted, just for an instant, toward the far end of the property, where a sturdy figure barked orders at labourers. Samuel Rathnayake, the estate manager. Poirot noted the glance and the fear behind it. Before more could be said, hurried footsteps approached, and a young British woman burst from the doorway. "Inspector Pereira!" she exclaimed breathlessly. "It's gone! The jewel case! The lock's been broken open!" Lydia Grant, the archaeologist. Poirot observed her with mild curiosity. Her hair was dishevelled, her cheeks flushed. Not from sadness, but exhilaration. "Gone?" Pereira asked sharply. "You're certain?" "Yes," she said. "And the drawer beneath it. Someone searched through it. Papers scattered. Someone was hunting for something." Poirot's attention pricked. "Papers? Not jewels?" Lydia blinked. I don't know, but it looked like a hurried search." Poirot strolled calmly across the veranda, fingertips brushing the railing. Again, the faintest trace of blue shimmer. And another substance, smooth, fragrant, unmistakable. "Sandalwood powder," Poirot murmured. Pereira raised a brow. "Common enough in the region. Not on a tea estate veranda, mon ami." Poirot turned toward the household gathered just beyond the veranda doors. 4 faces stared back, each marked with their own blend of sorrow, confusion, and, yes, fear. The suspects, Evelyn Henbury, the widow, graceful, distant, hiding years of marital tension beneath a veil of composure. Dr. Julian Marsh, the plantation's British physician, handsome, scholarly, yet visibly uneasy, as though carrying a secret burden. Samuel Rathnayake, estate manager, strong, respected, but with eyes that smouldered with suppressed resentment. Lydia Grant, archaeologist, bright, ambitious, and far too excited for someone who had just discovered a dead man. Poirot clasped his hands. "Superintendent, I should like a word with each member of the household. A murder stains every soul who stands near it." Pereira nodded. "We'll begin immediately." But before the interviews could start, A high-pitched shriek pierced the estate. A servant girl came running from inside the bungalow, tears streaming down her face. "Inspector! Sir! The safe! There is something else! Something terrible!" Pereira rushed inside. Poirot followed. In the dim study, the jewel case lay open, its contents scattered like a broken promise. The magnificent sapphire of Ceylon, large as a pigeon's egg, blue as a midnight sea, was nowhere to be seen. Poirot approached the safe. He bent, studying the mechanism. "Not forced," he murmured. "Picked, cleanly, precisely, with skill." Pereira frowned. So the murderer had professional experience? Poirot shook his head. No. Murderers often panic. Jewel thieves do not. Yet this thief, he left behind something. He reached into the shadows of the safe and withdrew a single object. A small shard of glass, blue, gleaming faintly. Pereira's eyes widened. "Is that—" Poirot held it delicately. "A fragment of a decoy. Someone wished to mislead us into thinking the sapphire was broken. But no true thief would break such a jewel. Never." He placed the shard on a cloth and examined the surroundings. There were scratch marks on the study floor, indicating the safe had been pulled slightly forward. A bold move. He stood, dusting his hands. This crime is not merely one of desperation. It is planned, calculated, but also passionate. He turned sharply. "Where is Dr. Marsh?" A servant replied, "In his quarters, sir." Poirot moved swiftly through the corridor, entering the physician's room without ceremony. It smelled faintly of antiseptic and ink. On the desk lay scattered papers, a map of the plantation, and a journal. Poirot picked up the journal. Pereira stiffened. "Poirot! Mon ami! A dead man does not demand privacy." Inside were notes about Henbury's health, heart strain, stress, exhaustion. Poirot frowned. Henbury was ill? Pereira nodded. Marsh said not severely. Poirot traced a line in the journal. "Warning, heavy exertion may prove dangerous." He closed the book. So, the victim's health was precarious. Could be useful knowledge if one wished to cause death without leaving marks. Pereira looked uneasy. But the man died from a blow to the skull. Poirot smiled slowly. Yes, but knowledge of his weakness could have encouraged someone to confront him, knowing he might not survive the struggle. The sound of raised voices drew their attention. Back on the veranda, the suspects argued heatedly. Samuel Rathniaki shouted, "Don't look at me as though I killed him! My entire livelihood depended on him!" Lydia Grant snapped, "You despised him, everyone knows it!" Dr. Marsh interjected, "This is not the time." Evelyn's voice cut through like ice. "Enough! My husband is dead! Have you no decency?" Poirot stepped forward. "Decency, madame, is often the first casualty when guilt trembles in the room." The group fell silent. Poirot walked slowly, his gaze sweeping over each face. "There are lies here," he said quietly. "Lies born last night, lies whispered in the dark, and one of them," he gestured to the covered body, "has woken this morning as a corpse." No one breathed. Poirot continued, "Before I proceed, there is one thing I must know." He turned to Pereira. "What was the exact time the body was found?" Pereira replied, "At dawn, just after 5. Poirot nodded. "And the last person to see Monsieur Henbury alive?" Pereira looked at the assembled group. "None will admit to it." Poirot smiled thinly. "Then I must discover who lies." He knelt once more by the veranda step, his eyes narrowing at a faint indentation, footprints, blurred but not erased. Small size, likely a woman. He stood, and the night was damp. If someone left the veranda recently, the ground would tell us. He glanced toward the path leading to the back of the estate. Fresh, prints half hidden. Poirot followed the trail a few steps. leaves crushed, soil disturbed, and faintly, again, the lingering scent of sandalwood. He returned to the group. "My friends," he said, "what we have here is not merely the death of a plantation owner. It is a tapestry woven from jealousy, ambition, deceit, and fear." His eyes hardened. "And before another dawn rises, I will unravel it." The sky darkened slightly as a cloud passed overhead, casting long, uneasy shadows across the veranda. Poirot looked once more at the body. "A single night has changed everything. And in that night, one of you became a murderer." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And I, Hercule Poirot, shall find which." Chapter 2. Shadows Beneath the Lantern Light. The evening arrived slowly, stretching its dusky fingers across the village until every street seemed washed in a pale bronze hue. It was a deceptive kind of quiet, one that wrapped itself around the houses, the trees, and even the old cobblestone paths, as if trying to muffle anything that might disturb the brittle calm clinging to the air. For Inspector Rayan Mirza, this quiet felt less like peace and more like anticipation, an atmosphere that trembled with things unsaid and truths hidden in the deep pockets of the night. He stood outside the Khan residence, the lantern beside the front gate swaying gently in the wind. Its flickering glow cast shadows that danced on the ground like restless spirits. And for a moment, Rayan wondered how many secrets this house had held even before the murder took place. A place like this, generations old, rich with history, was never just a home. It was an archive of emotions, rivalries, heartbreaks, and unspoken stories. He pushed the gate open, its iron hinges protesting with a sharp creak. The courtyard was dimly lit by small lamps placed along the boundary walls, their soft light failing to brighten the fog settling in. Servants lingered near the veranda, whispering to one another with wide, fearful eyes. When they saw the inspector approach, they fell into an uneasy silence, their gazes dipping toward the ground. Rayan took mental note of every detail, the tension in their shoulders, the guilt that shimmered faintly in their expressions, and the way their hands fidgeted as if trying to hide the tremor in their fingers. Fear always pointed somewhere. It was either fear of the truth or fear of being caught in a lie. The drawing-room doors stood half open, revealing the silhouette of Zara Khan inside, a figure of elegance draped in sorrow. Her back was straight, her posture composed, yet her hands twisted a thin silver chain around her fingers. A small tremor rippled through her shoulders whenever her thoughts slipped into silence. She was the victim's daughter, and though she had shown remarkable poise earlier, the cracks were beginning to show. Rayan stepped into the room, the wooden floor groaning beneath his boots. Zara's eyes lifted, their usual fire dimmed but not extinguished. "You said you had more questions," she murmured, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of exhaustion. "Yes," Rayan replied, settling into the chair across from her. "And I need you to answer them with complete honesty. The smallest detail might be the key to the truth." She swallowed hard, nodding. "Let's start with the last conversation you had with your father," he continued. "Anything you remember, tone, words, hints, couldn't matter." Zara's gaze drifted to the window, to the sky slowly drowning in the night's embrace. "He was tense," she said softly, "more than I'd ever seen him. He kept saying we needed to prepare, but he wouldn't say for what. When I asked him directly, he changed the subject. He moved around the room like he was searching for something or expecting someone." "Expecting someone?" Rayan leaned forward. "Yes. He kept glancing toward the front door, every few minutes, as if he had scheduled a meeting, but the person was late. A shiver ran through her. He wasn't the type to fear anyone. But that evening, he looked worried. Ryan tapped his pen lightly against his notebook. Did he mention any problems at work? Any threats? No, but... She hesitated, her eyes flicking to the shadows trembling against the curtains. Someone visited him 2 days ago. Rayan's grip tightened slightly around the pen. Who? I don't know, she whispered. He refused to let anyone in the study while they talked. Even I wasn't allowed. But when the person left, my father looked shaken, pale, as if he'd seen a ghost. The inspector's mind began stitching pieces together, fragments of fear, secrecy, and timing. Whatever had happened 2 days ago was not coincidence. Zara, he said quietly, you're strong, but strength shouldn't keep you from telling me the truth. Do you believe your father knew he was in danger? Her breath caught. Yes, she admitted finally. I think he knew. A gust of wind brushed past the windows, rattling them enough to make her flinch. Ryan's gaze travelled around the room, noticing a small portrait placed on the side table, a family picture. The late Mr. Saeed Khan stood tall, dignified, smiling faintly as if hiding something even in happiness. Secrets, Ryan thought, rarely appeared out of nowhere. They lived in people long before tragedy forced them into the open. Zara, he began again, you said earlier that your father went outside around the time of the murder. Do you know why? She shook her head slowly. No, but he took his old pocket watch with him. He never carried it unless he was meeting someone important. Can I see the watch? Her lips trembled. It went missing. We haven't found it since the night he died. Rayan stiffened. A missing object, especially one the victim intentionally carried moments before death, was never irrelevant. Someone had taken it. The question was why. He stood. I need to search the study. Zara nodded silently, rising to lead him through the hallway. The air grew heavier with every step. Old houses often carried creaks, but tonight the sounds felt different, echoes that trailed behind them like whispers running along the walls. The study door opened with a long sigh. Inside, the room was coated in a subtle darkness, broken only by a single lamp on the desk. Shelves lined the walls, overflowing with books, documents, and wooden boxes. Rayan scanned the room thoroughly, his instincts buzzing. His gaze fell on the desk. Papers were scattered everywhere, but not randomly. They were shuffled, rearranged. Someone had searched this room after the murder. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. Rayan crouched near the drawer. The lock was broken. Did anyone touch this after your father died? He asked. Zara stepped back, alarmed. No, I made sure no one went inside. Which meant the break-in happened before the murder, or during it. Rayan opened the drawer. Inside lay a torn envelope. He lifted it carefully. The paper was expensive, the seal ripped off violently. The contents were missing, but faint traces of ink clung to the inner edges of the envelope. What was inside this? He asked. Zara shook her head again. I don't know, but I saw him holding that envelope 2 days ago, the same day the stranger visited. The stranger again. Everything kept looping back to that meeting. Rayan shifted his attention to the bookshelf. A faint scratch mark caught his eye. Thin, sharp, fresh. He ran his fingers along the shelf edge until he felt a slight bump underneath a book cover. He pulled the book out. A small compartment was carved into the wood behind it. Empty. Inspector? Zara's voice trembled. What does that mean? It means your father didn't trust anyone, Rayan replied slowly. and whatever he was hiding was important enough to keep in a concealed compartment. But someone else knew about it and took it. Zara paled. Ryan straightened. His next step was the backyard, where the body had been found. As he moved through the corridor, Zara trailing behind, the atmosphere of the house seemed to shift. The walls tightened, the lights flickered, and a distant sound echoed, like the faint click of metal. Ryan's instincts sharpened. When they stepped into the backyard, the night had deepened. The garden was drenched in moonlight, though most of it was swallowed by the surrounding trees. A ring of stones marked the place where the body had been discovered. The air here felt colder, as if the earth itself remembered the violence committed upon it. Ryan knelt near the stones, his eyes scanning the ground. He traced a faint mark in the soil, a drag line. Someone had moved something through the garden, or someone had dragged the victim. He followed the mark until it stopped abruptly behind a thick cluster of jasmine bushes. He parted the leaves. A flash of metal glinted beneath the roots. Ryan reached down and pulled it out. A pocket watch. Old, familiar, the one Zara had described, but its surface was smeared with dark, dry blood. He exhaled slowly. "Zara," he called, "come here." She approached hesitantly. When she saw the watch, her breath broke into pieces. That's his... Why, how... Ryan opened it carefully. No picture inside. But there was something else. A tiny folded paper, wedged behind the inner layer. He removed it gently. The paper was small, yellowed and wrinkled, but the writing was clear enough. One line, one sentence. "Meet me where the truth was buried." Signed with a single initial. R. Ryan frowned deeply. The message was not a threat. It was a summons, a planned meeting. Someone had asked Mr. Saheed to meet them at a specific place, a place connected to a buried truth. But what truth? And who was R? As Ryan stood, a sudden realization struck him. A chilling awareness that he and Zara were no longer alone in the garden. His senses picked up the faint crunch of gravel. Someone was watching them. He turned sharply. A figure stood near the far wall, barely visible in the darkness, cloaked in black, motionless, watching. Ryan's hand instinctively reached for his holster. "Stop!" he commanded. The figure didn't move. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then, swift as a shadow, the figure bolted toward the trees, disappearing into the thick night before Ryan could follow. Zara gasped. "Who was that?" Ryan stared into the darkness, his jaw tightening. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but they didn't come here by mistake. They came to see what we would find." And now they knew. The mystery had deepened far beyond a simple murder. Secrets buried in the past were resurfacing, and someone who signed messages with R, was determined to keep the truth hidden. No matter the cost. Chapter 3. The letter in the Ash's morning arrived not gently, but with a heaviness that clung to the air like the weight of something unspoken. The sun rose pale and weak, its light struggling to cut through the veil of mist that covered the village. Inspector Ryan Mirza woke earlier than usual, his mind still tangled in the events of the previous night. The hidden compartment, the blood-stained pocket watch, the mysterious letter signed with R, and above all, the shadowy figure that had watched them from the darkness. Every instinct in him insisted that the figure had not come merely to observe. They had come to warn, or perhaps to threaten. By the time he reached the Khan residence again, the servants were already sweeping the courtyard, their eyes still clouded with fear. Zara Khan stood near the veranda, wrapped in a shawl despite the mild air, her face pale and sleepless. "You didn't rest," Rayhan said softly. "How can I?" she whispered. Someone was here last night. Someone dangerous, and they were watching us. Rayan didn't argue. Her fear was justified. Instead, he gestured for her to follow him to the study. The first light of day illuminated the dust motes swirling in the room, settling on the desk where the torn envelope still lay like a silent accusation. "We're missing something," Rayan murmured, scanning the shelves again. "Something your father hid, and someone else desperately wanted." Zara hesitated before speaking. "Inspector, there is something I didn't tell you." He turned to face her fully. "Go on." She took a shaky breath. 2 months ago, my father started burning documents in the backyard. At first, I thought it was just old files from the company, but he kept doing it late at night when everyone was asleep. And each time he finished, he would stand there staring at the ashes, as if he regretted burning them. Rayan's brows drew together. "Why didn't you mention this yesterday?" "Because I didn't think it mattered," she whispered. "But now I think he was hiding something long before he died." Without another word, Rayan headed toward the backyard. The early morning mist clung to the grass, and the stone ring where the body had been found looked colder than before. Zara pointed toward a smaller clearing near the old mango tree. "He always burned things there," she said. Rayan approached the spot. The ground was stained with grey ash, though the wind and dew had partially scattered it. He crouched down, brushing the remaining soot aside. Something metallic glinted beneath the thin layer of ash. He carefully unearthed a small brass box. Half melted at the edges, its surface blackened by fire. Zara gasped. "He didn't burn everything." "Looks like he tried to," Rayan whispered, prying the box open with gloved fingers. Inside lay charred remnants of paper, fragile, flaking, nearly destroyed. But among the burnt fragments was a single piece that had survived enough to still hold writing. Rayan lifted it delicately. Blackened edges, faded ink, but the message was still readable. "We were wrong. We buried the truth instead of facing it, and now it's coming back." No signature, no date, only that haunting sentence. Zara's face drained of colour. "Buried the truth. It's the same phrase from the message in the pocket watch." Rayan nodded slowly. "And this wasn't written recently. The handwriting, it looks older." Zara stepped closer. "What does it mean?" "It means whatever your father was involved in started long before his death," Rayan murmured. "Possibly years, decades even." He placed the burnt piece aside and continued searching the box. A small metal seal lay at the bottom, soot covering its intricate design. Rayan rubbed his thumb over the surface. A symbol emerged, a circle. Inside it, a crescent moon. And beneath the crescent, 3 vertical lines. Rayan's mind raced. He had seen this symbol before, buried in old police archives. It belonged to a defunct group, one that had dissolved over 20 years ago after a scandal that never fully made it to the public eye. Zara watched him anxiously. "You recognize it, don't you?" He hesitated. "It's an old insignia. A group your father might have been a part of once." "What kind of group?" Rayan held the seal tightly. "A society formed by a few influential men in the region. They worked behind closed doors, making decisions that shaped businesses, land ownerships, even elections. It was all unofficial and illegal." Zara took a step back. "Are you saying my father was part of some secret organization?" "I'm saying this symbol suggests he was connected to them somehow. And if the group disbanded years ago, then whatever they buried." He looked toward the trees, toward the shadows that had watched them last night. "Someone doesn't want it coming out." A chill settled over the garden. The wind rustled the leaves as if whispering the stories the earth still remembered. Rian stood, his jaw set. "Zara, I need to know something. Did your father ever mention a person whose name started with R?" She squeezed her eyes shut, thinking hard. Then her breath hitched. "Rafik! Who is Rafik? He was my father's closest friend. They grew up together, but 10 years ago, they stopped speaking completely. My father never told me why." Ryan felt a sharp twist of recognition. Rafik, a name connected to that old group. A man who vanished from the public eye after the group dissolved. And now his initial appeared in a message hidden inside a blood-stained pocket watch. Ryan turned toward the house. "I need to find Rafik." Zara's voice trembled. "Do you think he's the one who killed my father?" Rian paused, his expression unreadable. "I don't know yet, but he's involved, one way or another." He took a step forward, but suddenly halted when something crunched beneath his boot. He lifted his foot. A small shard of glass lay in the grass. Sharp, clean, recently broken. It didn't belong to the garden. He picked it up. A fragment from a lens, too fine to be from spectacles. "A surveillance lens. We're being watched," he whispered. Zara stiffened. "Here, now." Rayan looked around the trees, his eyes scanning every shadow. The figure from last night. Had they left more than footprints? "They were here recently," he said, "maybe moments before we came." The air had turned heavier again, thick with tension. Zara stepped closer. "Inspector, what do we do now?" Rayan pocketed the lens, his eyes still locked on the tree line as the wind stirred the branches, almost as if someone was still there, still listening. "We dig," he answered, "because whatever truth your father buried, someone else is afraid we'll uncover it." And as the morning sun rose higher, burning through the mist, the shadows beneath the lantern light began to retreat, not because the danger was gone, but because it was moving, waiting for its next moment to strike. Chapter 4. Shadows Beneath the Mango Tree. The day wore on with a deceptive calm that settled uneasily over the Khan estate. The sun had risen fully now, casting bright light over the lawn, yet its warmth did little to dispel the chill that clung to the air. Inspector Rayan Mirza remained outside longer than intended, his gaze lingering on the mango tree beneath which the burnt box had been found. Zara Khan stood a few steps behind him, her hands clasped tightly before her, watching him with a mixture of fear and fragile hope. Rayan crouched down once more, examining the soil around the burnt patch. The earth appeared disturbed, not significantly, but enough for a trained eye to sense that something had been moved. A trail of faint impressions stretched outward, half-erased footprints that led toward the far end of the estate, where the tree line met the boundary wall. These prints were not from last night's visitor. They were older, days old, maybe weeks. "Your father came here often?" Rayan asked without turning. Zara nodded. "Almost every night in the past month. I would hear him step outside around midnight. He always carried something in his hand. Papers, I think. And after he burned them, he would just stand there, staring at the ashes." Rayan straightened, dusting off his hands. "He was waiting." Zara frowned. "For what?" "For something to resurface," Rayan murmured. "Or someone." His attention drifted back to the faint footprints. They were deep, the impressions heavier on the right, suggesting a limp or old injury. A pattern that might match someone advanced in years. Someone like Rafik. He turned sharply to Zara. "Do you know where Rafik lives?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "After the fallout, he left the area. No one heard from him again, but I do know one thing. Rayan waited. Before they stopped speaking, he and my father had a terrible argument. My mother told me later that it wasn't about business. It was about a secret they both shared. Something from their youth. Something they regretted. Rayan exhaled slowly. Regret is a dangerous thing. It grows with time until it demands to be dealt with. A sudden rustling sound came from the bushes near the mango tree. Instincts sharp, Rayan stepped forward, motioning Zara to stay behind. He parted the leaves cautiously and paused. A small cloth bag lay hidden under the branches, weighted down by stones. It was carefully placed, not discarded. Rayan retrieved it, the fabric coarse and stained with dirt. Zara's eyes widened as he untied it. Inside were several photographs, old, yellowed at the edges. Rayan spread them carefully on the grass. The images captured 3 men standing side by side, smiling stiffly at the camera. They were younger then, perhaps in their early 20s. Zara pointed at one of them immediately. "That's my father." Rayan nodded. The second man he recognized from an old case file, Rafiq. But the third man was unfamiliar. Tall, lean, with sharp features and intense eyes. On the back of the photograph, in neat handwriting, were the initials. A.H. Rayan felt a subtle tightening in his chest. A.H. Another name from the past. Another man tied to the disbanded society whose insignia now lay in his pocket. Zara leaned closer. "Who is he?" "Amir Hassan," Rayan said quietly. "A man connected to the same circle. He disappeared nearly 20 years ago under mysterious circumstances." Zara swallowed. "Then why is his photograph buried beneath our mango tree?" Rayan studied the 3 young men in the photo. They appeared close. Brothers in camaraderie, partners in ambition, bound by something that had once united them, and later destroyed them. Another photograph lay beneath the first, showing the same 3 men standing near a cliffside, overlooking a river. But this time their expressions were tense, their smiles forced. Something had already begun to fester between them. And then there was a third photograph. This one stopped Rayan cold. It showed the same cliffside. Only 2 men remained. Amir Hassan was missing. Rayan stared at the image longer than the others. Zara's voice trembled behind him. "Where is the third man?" "That," he said slowly, "may be the very question someone is willing to kill to keep buried." He stacked the photographs carefully and placed them back in the cloth bag. But before tying it closed, he noticed a small folded slip of paper tucked inside. He opened it. The river remembers, but men do not. No signature. Zara's breath caught. "Inspector, what does that mean?" Rayan's tone was grim. "It means that whatever happened at that cliff involved all 3 men, and someone, maybe your father, wanted the truth hidden until now." A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees. A branch cracked sharply overhead. Zara flinched. Rayan looked around quickly. His senses prickled. The estate felt too quiet, too watched. He pocketed the photographs and the cryptic message. "We need to get inside, now." They hurried back toward the veranda. As they reached the steps, Rayan glanced back toward the mango tree and froze. Someone had left another object under the shade of the tree, something that hadn't been there moments earlier. A single white feather. Zara saw it too. Her hand flew to her mouth. "What does that mean?" Rayan didn't answer immediately. His expression turned hard, thoughtful, calculating. The white feather had been a calling card used in the past by the same defunct group whenever a member broke loyalty or attempted to expose them. It symbolized betrayal, and impending consequences. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. Someone is sending a message. Zara's voice trembled. To me? No, Rayan said. To your father. And now, to anyone digging where he once dug. He stepped inside the house, his mind working rapidly, stitching clues together into a fragile, incomplete tapestry of motives and secrets. Zara, he said, turning to her, there is something I must ask you now. She met his gaze, her fear deepening. What is it? Did your father ever mention the river? Her eyes widened. Yes, he did, many times. He used to say the river took something from him, something he could never forgive. Rayan's heart steadied with chilling clarity. Whatever truth had been buried began at that river, and it was about to resurface. Chapter 5. The River's Whisper. The river lay several miles from the Khan estate, cutting through the landscape like a ribbon of silver beneath the midday sun. Inspector Rayan Mirza stood on the bank, the rush of water filling his ears with a steady haunting murmur. Zara Khan stood beside him, her shawl wrapped tightly around her as the breeze lifted strands of her hair. The ground beneath their feet was uneven, embedded with stones and twisted roots, evidence of many years of erosion by the relentless current. Rayan gazed across the water, remembering the photograph of the 3 young men standing on a similar bank. He imagined them laughing, shoulders touching, unaware of the fractures that would one day tear through their unity. Zara's father, Rafiq, Amir Hassan, a trio bound by ambition and something darker. I've always hated this place, Zara whispered, hugging herself. My father used to come here often when I was a child. Sometimes he brought me along. He would just stand here, staring into the water, as if waiting for something to rise from it. Rayan nodded. He came here not for peace, but because this place held a memory, a painful one. Zara lowered her eyes. Do you think this is where he lost Amir Hassan? Rayan hesitated. Perhaps. Or perhaps it's where he lost something far more difficult to name. He took a few steps closer to the edge, crouching to examine the soil. The ground was harder here, compacted by frequent footsteps. Someone had been visiting this river often and not long ago. The prints were fresh, only a day or 2 old. One set of footprints caught Rayan's attention immediately. Deep impressions on the right side. A limp. Rafiq. Rayan's eyes narrowed. He's been here recently. Zara tensed. Rafiq? Yes, and he wasn't alone. Rayan pointed to a second set of footprints, narrower, lighter, possibly a woman's. Someone accompanied him. Zara's brows knitted in confusion. Who would come here with him? Rayan shook his head. Not sure, but we need to find out. A sudden breeze swept across the river, carrying with it the faint scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. It reminded Rayan of something he had seen last night in the Khan estate. The shadow watching from the trees. He had a feeling the same watcher had been here too. Further up the riverbank, something glimmered faintly beneath a patch of grass. Rayan moved toward it. Buried partially in the mud was a metal object, thin and curved. He pulled it free and brushed off the dirt. A cufflink. Zara gasped. That's my father's. Rayan turned it over. The initials matched, HK, Haroon Khan. But there was something else. Dried blood on the edge. Old blood. Not enough to indicate murder, but enough to suggest injury. How did it end up here? Zara asked, her voice barely steady. Rayan slipped the cufflink into a small evidence pouch. It means your father came here recently, possibly the night he died or shortly before. He scanned the riverbank again and noticed an area where the ground had been disturbed. A shallow indentation that looked like someone had knelt, maybe to hide something. Rayan brushed away the loose soil. Beneath it lay a rusted tin box, small and dented. He lifted it, weighing its contents. Something shifted inside. Zara stepped closer, her breath held. Rayan opened the lid. Inside were a few folded pages, yellowed and fragile. Rayan handled them with care. Zara leaned over his shoulder as he unfolded the first sheet. It was a letter, written in Harun Khan's handwriting. If anyone finds this, know that the river holds more than memories, it holds our sin. Amir did not slip. He did not drown by accident. He died because we let him. And now the truth follows us, heavier than the water that took him. Zara's knees almost buckled. Rayan caught her by the arm. He killed him, she whispered. My father killed Amir Hassan. Rayan shook his head. Not alone. He said we. More than one man was responsible. And judging by the photographs, it was Harun, Rafiq, and maybe someone else. He pulled out the second page. This one was shorter, more frantic. We were wrong. He is not gone. Or perhaps guilt changes a man's sense of reality. I see him in the river. I hear his voice at night. And Rafiq hears it too. Zara backed away, trembling. Inspector, are you saying my father was haunted? Rayan folded the paper slowly. Haunted, yes, but not by a ghost, by truth. Guilt plays tricks on a man's mind, and someone may have been using that guilt against him. Zara swallowed, her voice shaking. Someone who wanted revenge for Amir? Or someone who wanted to control your father through his fear? Rayan replied. The white feather, the surveillance lens, the photographs left at the mango tree. These are not signs of a vengeful spirit. They are the tools of a manipulator. Zara turned toward the river again. Do you think Rafiq is behind all this? Rayan thought deeply before answering. He may be involved, but I don't believe he is the mastermind. Not yet. He tucked the letters back into the box. The wind shifted again, and Zara shivered. Inspector, if my father felt haunted, if he believed someone was watching him, then whoever did this has been planning it for a long time. Rayan's gaze swept across the river, studying the far bank. Yes, he said quietly, and the plan is not over. Then something caught his eye. A scrap of fabric, snagged on a thorny bush near the edge. He retrieved it carefully. A torn piece of dark cloth, thin but strong. It looked like it had been ripped from clothing during a struggle. Zara softly asked, What is that? Rayan answered without looking up. A sign that someone fought here. Someone your father met before he died. He stood slowly, his eyes narrowing as he studied the flowing river. This was not an act of guilt alone, he murmured. It was a crime hidden beneath guilt, and the river, like the past, has begun to give up its secrets. Zara stepped beside him, her voice a whisper. Inspector, what comes next? Rayan closed the tin box, his expression darkening. Next, we find Rafiq, and we learn the truth they all tried to drown. Chapter 6. The Circle Narrows. A low winter sun filtered through the grimy windows of the safe house as Roman paced back and forth, the worn wooden floorboards groaning beneath each step. He hadn't slept all night. The revelations Cassian had dropped in Chapter 5 had changed everything. Ilara's father wasn't just a victim of the city's corruption. He had been a part of the original syndicate that birthed the predator hunting them now. And if Cassian was right, the predator had a name, the Circle of Veils. Ilara sat silently at the table, her fingers moving in restless patterns along the spine of a leather journal. Her expression was strained, drawn tight like a bowstring. Roman had seen her angry before, but this was something deeper, something personal. Say something, Roman finally muttered. Alara didn't look up. I'm thinking. Cassian, slumped in a chair near the far wall with his hands tied, scoffed. Thinkin' won't change the truth. Roman spun toward him. You can drop the riddles. You know more than you're saying. Cassian's hazel eyes sharpened. If I speak more, I die. If I keep silent, I might still die. Understand my hesitation? Alara raised her gaze, eyes like storm clouds ready to burst. You protected my father for years, she said. If you know who killed him, you owe me the truth. For a moment, real remorse flickered across Cassian's face. Alara, your father wasn't killed by a rival. He wasn't killed for betrayal. He was killed because he tried to break the circle from within. The room fell still. Roman's heartbeat thudded in his ears. So he was trying to expose them? Cassian nodded. Yes. And he gathered proof, documents, names, ledgers, evidence that could topple half the city's power structure. But before he could release it, the circle sent their enforcer. Alara's voice broke. The one with the mark? Cassian hesitated, then said, The sigil of the veiled serpent. You've seen it? Roman remembered the cold, masked figure they encountered in the alley days ago. The one who moved like a shadow. The one who seemed to vanish at will. A chill crept up his spine. He's called the Whisper, Cassian continued. The Circle's deadliest hunter. If he's after you now, it means you're getting close to something they want buried. Alara stared at her hands, the leather journal trembling slightly. Roman moved closer. That journal, it belonged to your father? She nodded, swallowing hard. I haven't been able to open it. The lock is strange. It needs a cipher, and I've never been able to break it. Cassian shifted. May I see it? Alara stiffened. Roman stepped between them. Not a chance. But Cassian shook his head. I'm not asking to escape. I'm saying the cipher is a circle design. I can try to open it, but you'll have to untie my hands. No, Roman said instantly. Yes, Alara countered softly. If that journal has answers about my father, I'm not waiting another second. Roman turned to her, frustration flaring. We don't know if we can trust him. Alara looked at Cassian, then at Roman. I do. Roman exhaled sharply, feeling the weight of the decision crush his chest. After a long moment, he reluctantly loosened Cassian's bindings, only enough to free his fingers. Cassian accepted the journal carefully, his touch oddly reverent. Your father was brilliant, he murmured, and paranoid. He examined the lock, tracing the symbols etched into the brass. This isn't just a cipher, it's a sequence. Roman leaned over his shoulder. Meaning, Cassian gestured, these symbols represent places, not numbers, locations in the city. Your father hid his code in landmarks. Alara frowned. But which ones? Cassian looked up at her. The ones you visited as a child. The ones he brought you to. A sharp breath escaped her as the realization dawned. The old clock tower, the observatory, the river gate. Cassian nodded. If we follow those locations, we can unlock this. Roman didn't like where this was going. And walk right into the Circle's territory, they'll be waiting. They'll be watching everything, Cassian said. But you have something they don't. Alara's memory. Alara's voice was steady now, iron beneath the grief. Then we start with the nearest location. Roman rubbed his forehead. Which is the clock tower, she said, by the old district. Cassian stiffened instantly. That area is crawling with circle sentinels after sundown. If we're going, it has to be now. Roman looked at Cassian sharply. You're coming? Cassian's smile was thin. If I stay, they'll find me. If I go with you, I might survive. Simple mathematics. Roman didn't trust him, but the truth was harsher than his doubt. They needed him. Elara gathered her coat, her resolve hardening. "We leave in 5 minutes." As she stepped outside to prepare the vehicle, Cassian leaned closer to Roman. "There's something you must understand," he whispered. "The Circle is not just a criminal network. It's a legacy, a dynasty built on secrets. Your involvement now makes you a threat to them. They won't just target you. They'll erase everything connected to you." Roman's jaw clenched. "Let them try." Cassian shook his head slowly. "You don't understand. The Whisper doesn't try. He finishes." Roman stared at him for a long, tense moment. "Then we finish this first." The safe-house door opened, and Elara stood framed in the cold light. "Ready?" Roman nodded, a storm building behind his eyes. The Circle had taken too much already. It was time to expose them, piece by piece, no matter the cost. As the three of them stepped out into the sharp morning air, Roman felt the city's gaze tighten around them like a noose. Every street corner, every shadow, every window felt alive, observing. Chapter 7. Shadows at the clock tower. The drive to the old district was silent, an uneasy, heavy silence that wrapped around the trio like a tightening rope. The city outside rolled past in a blur of decaying brick walls, narrow alleys, and flickering streetlights that barely fought the gloom. Dawn had risen, but the old district never truly woke. It merely existed in a perpetual twilight, forgotten by progress and claimed by crime. Elara sat in the passenger seat, gripping her father's journal tightly against her chest. Cassian rode in the back seat, eyes scanning every passing street as if expecting a shadow to peel free and strike. Roman drove, his jaws set, mind racing through contingency plans no longer guaranteed to work. When the clock tower finally loomed ahead, a crooked silhouette of stone and rusted metal, Elara exhaled shakily. Roman parked a block away, behind the skeletal remains of a collapsed bookstore. "We go on foot from here," Roman said. Cassian nodded. "Good. Vehicles make noise. The Whisper listens for noise." Roman shot him a glare, but Elara just stepped out without hesitation. She approached the tower's rusted entrance door and pressed her palm against the cold metal. "I used to come here every weekend," she murmured. "My father said the tower was a reminder that even broken things keep time in their own way." Roman softened. "He brought you here for a reason. Something in this place matters." Cassian crouched by the doorway, examining the old lock. "No traps! Too public!" They entered. The tower's interior was a ghost of its former grandeur. Dust-coated beams stretched upward toward the distant gears that once guided the clock. Shafts of light pushed through cracked stone, illuminating floating motes like tiny stars. Elara stepped onto the central platform, her footsteps echoing softly. "Where would he hide a clue?" Roman asked. Elara glanced around, scanning the familiar space. The staircase, the lower chamber, maybe the pendulum housing. She froze. A faint symbol, carved crudely into one of the wooden support beams, caught her eye. A crescent shape intertwined with 3 vertical lines. "Roman," she whispered, "look." Cassian inhaled sharply. The circle's old symbol, a precursor version. Your father must have put it there deliberately. Roman moved closer. "What does it mean?" Cassian examined the carving. The older symbols were directional. They indicated pathways. This one, he traced the lines. It points downward. Roman's gaze shifted to the floorboards. "There's something beneath us." They worked together to pry up the boards, revealing a narrow hatch concealed under decades of dust. A cold draft wafted upward. Elara swallowed. "I never knew this existed." Roman flicked on his flashlight. Stay behind me." They descended a rusted iron ladder into a compact stone chamber below the tower. The air was damp and stale. Decades-old pipes snaked along the walls. At the far end stood an old metal cabinet, its surface covered with another cipher etched into the steel. Cassian's eyes widened. This is your father's code. He used the same pattern in the journal lock." Elara knelt before the cabinet, tracing the unfamiliar glyphs. "Can you open it?" Cassian hesitated. "I think so." Roman positioned himself near the ladder, listening for any sound above. A low hum drifted through the tower's interior, the grinding gears of the clock, or something far more sinister. Cassian twisted the glyphs in sequence, murmuring calculations under his breath. A metallic click echoed through the chamber. The cabinet swung open. Inside was a small brass box, no bigger than a book, engraved with the same serpent insignia they had seen before. Elara reached for it. A distant footstep echoed above them. Roman tensed instantly. Cassian froze, breath caught. "He's here!" Elara paled. "The whisper?" Roman motioned sharply. "Lights off! No sound!" They extinguished the flashlights. The chamber plunged into darkness. Above, the footsteps were slow, calculated, a predator pacing through familiar terrain. A faint metallic scraping sound followed, steel on stone, the whisper's blade. Cassian whispered almost silently, "He doesn't search, he hunts." Roman clenched his fists, mind racing. They were cornered with only one exit, the ladder leading straight into the whisper's path. Elara pressed closer to Roman, clutching the brass box. "What do we do?" Roman darted his gaze around the dark chamber and spotted a narrow maintenance duct half hidden behind old pipework. "There," Cassian squinted. "That leads to the old sewer lines. It's unstable." "Better unstable than dead," Roman hissed. The footsteps grew louder, descending the tower stairs, getting closer. Roman ushered Elara into the duct first, then Cassian. The metal groaned under their weight. Roman slid in last, pulling the grate shut behind him. Just as he latched it, a shadow dropped into the chamber, silent as breath. Through the thin slits of the duct, Roman saw him tall, wrapped in dark garments, a mask of matte black covering his face. No eyes visible, only the sigil of the veiled serpent gleaming on his chest. The whisper moved with unnatural fluidity, scanning the room without turning his head. He examined the ladder, the cabinet, the pried-up boards. Then he lifted his blade, a long curved weapon, and dragged it lightly across the stone wall. The sound vibrated through the duct, chilling Roman's blood. Cassian mouthed silently, "Keep moving!" They crawled deeper into the darkness. The metal tunnel rattled faintly with each movement. Halfway through, Roman heard the blade strike the grate behind them. One single, quiet tap. A warning, a promise. Elara trembled, but kept crawling. The duct sloped downward sharply until it opened into a narrow moss-coated passageway leading into pitch black. They dropped onto the damp floor, gasping for air. Roman steadied Elara. Cassian wiped sweat from his brow. "He knows we have the box," Cassian whispered. Roman nodded grimly. "Then we need to know what's inside." Elara held it tighter. "Not here, not underground. We need safety first." Roman listened. The sewers echoed faintly, distant currents of water rushing somewhere far below. No footsteps, no breathing. "He won't stop," Cassian said. "Once the whisper chooses a target, the hunt never ends." Roman looked at the darkness ahead. "Then we make sure we end it first." With the brass box clutched between them, they began moving again, deeper into the maze beneath the city. Away from the tower, away from the whisper's silent wrath. But Roman knew the truth, settling like ice in his chest. Chapter 8. The Brass Box and the Serpent's Secret. 1,000 words. The sewer tunnel sloped downward until the air grew colder, heavier, and thick with the metallic scent of rust and forgotten water. Roman led the way. Flashlight dimmed to a thin beam, its light cutting through the darkness, but not far enough to grant comfort. Echoes rippled through the passages. Distant drips, shifting stones, the whisper of unseen currents. Elara walked between Roman and Cassian, clutching the brass box with both hands as though it were a fragile heartbeat. Every so often she wiped her palms against her skirt, as though the box's weight were growing with every step. "We need to rest," Elara whispered, her breath fogging in the cold air. Roman scanned the branching tunnels. Ahead. Another 50 meters. There's an old drainage chamber my father showed me years ago. It should still be stable. Cassian raised an eyebrow. "Your father brought you down here?" Roman didn't answer. Some memories were too clouded to revisit. They reached a stone archway, partially blocked by a fallen pipe, squeezing through until the space widened into a domed circular chamber. Pale green moss shimmered along the walls. An old maintenance lantern lay smashed in one corner. Roman checked the perimeter while Cassian examined the acoustics. "No echoes coming from the main passage," Cassian confirmed. "If the whisper followed, he's not close." Elara sank onto a dry stone ledge, the brass box resting in her lap. She spoke softly. "He was there, Cassian. He was right above us." Cassian kneeled in front of her. "And yet you escaped. That means something. It means your father's plan, whatever it was, still holds." Roman approached, brushing dust from his coat. "Let's open the box." Elara hesitated. "My father warned me that some truths change everything. Once you open a door, it cannot be closed again." Roman met her eyes. "We've already opened too many doors. Another won't matter now." Cassian gently slid the box from her hands, inspecting the serpent insignia. Same mechanism as before, 7 rotating plates, designed to mislead anyone without the proper sequence. Elara opened her father's journal and flipped through the ciphered pages until she found a small poem he had once recited to her. "When shadow chases broken dawn, turn thrice for truth, then twice withdrawn. Where serpent coils, the key is shown, what's lost in time becomes your own." Cassian smiled faintly. "Your father loved riddles." Roman crossed his arms. Translation: turn the first 3 plates forward, next 2 backward, then align the serpent sigil with the crescent. Cassian twisted the plates carefully. 1 click, another, a third. The box vibrated faintly, as though waking from a deep sleep. Then, with a muted click, it opened. Inside lay a folded parchment, a small jade disc etched with spiraling patterns, and a thin metal key engraved with numbers. Cassian inhaled sharply. "This is impossible." Roman frowned. "What are we looking at?" Cassian lifted the jade disc. "This is not from here. This is Ceylonese craftsmanship, pre-colonial era. It dates back centuries." Elara examined it. "My father spent months in Ceylon investigating artifacts. Could this be what he was protecting?" Roman pointed to the metal key. "Numbers, coordinates!" Cassian shook his head. "Something else. Look closer. The numbers are not in decimal or degrees. They're in an old navigational code. Maritime. Secretive." Elara unfolded the parchment, revealing a hand-drawn map of the city. But not as it was now. This map was old, showing structures that no longer existed. At the top, corner, her father had scribbled, The echo must be cleansed before the serpent awakens. Roman's expression darkened. What the hell does that mean? Cassian tapped the map. This mark here, the circle beneath the old district, that is the catacomb vault, a forgotten chamber beneath the city. Ilara's breath hitched. He wanted us to go there. Roman shook his head. Or he wanted to hide whatever this is from there. Before they could continue, a faint metallic clang echoed through the sewer tunnels. Cassian stiffened. Did you hear that? Roman extinguished the flashlight instantly. Darkness swallowed them. Another metallic sound followed. Closer, deliberate. Roman whispered, "He's tracking us." Ilara clutched the jade disc. "But we moved so far. How could he?" Cassian answered grimly. "He doesn't follow footprints. He follows fear." The chamber vibrated slightly as a soft scrape travelled along the corridor. Roman slowly drew his revolver, though he knew bullets were a delay at best. "We need to move," he whispered. "Now!" Cassian grabbed the box and map. Ilara slipped the jade disc into her pocket. They crept through the opposite tunnel, moving as silently as they could. The walls narrowed, water dripping steadily from above. Roman held his breath, listening. Another scrape, another, then silence. "Roman!" Cassian whispered. "Left path or right?" Roman studied the old tunnel markers carved into the stone. Left leads toward the collapsed rail line. Dead end. Right goes to the storm drains. Ilara pointed right. Storm drains led to the surface. We can escape. Roman hesitated. But the storm drains are wide. He'll have more room to maneuver. Cassian whispered, "We need air more than room." Roman nodded, motioning for them to follow. As they slipped into the right-hand passage, the tunnel abruptly opened into a larger drainage canal. A faint glow seeped from grates high above. "We're close," Ilara breathed. "Not close enough," a voice echoed. They froze, not the whisper, someone else. From the shadows stepped a figure, hooded, pale, breathing heavily as though he had run miles. Ilara's eyes widened. "Inspector Holden!" she gasped. The inspector staggered forward. His coat was torn, blood seeping from his arm. "I've been looking for you," he said between ragged breaths. "Your father, he warned me this would happen." Roman rushed to support him. "What happened to you? Who attacked you?" Holden shook his head, eyes wide with terror. "You don't understand. The whisper. He's not the only one after the box. The circle has awakened the second serpent." Ilara felt her knees weaken. "Second serpent?" Holden gave a weak, broken laugh. "The whisper is a hunter, but the second serpent, he's a devourer." A cold gust swept through the tunnel, extinguishing the faint light above. And from the darkness, behind Holden came a low, guttural hiss, a sound no human throat could ever make. Roman pushed Ilara behind him. Cassian drew his blade. Holden collapsed to the floor, whispering, "Run!" The hiss grew louder, closer, hungry. Chapter 9. The Devourer in the Dark. The tunnel swallowed the last trace of light, plunging everything into suffocating blackness. For a heartbeat, no one breathed, no one dared. The hiss that echoed through the cavernous drainage hall was low, rumbling and layered, as if several voices whispered the same sound from different throats. Roman's hand tightened around his revolver. "Stay behind me," he whispered, though his voice was barely audible above the echoing drip of water. Cassian crouched beside Holden's limp form. "He's unconscious," he murmured. "We can't leave him." "We might not have a choice," Roman said. Ilara forced herself to remain calm, though her heart pounded so fiercely she feared it would give them away. The jade disc in her pocket felt warm now, almost pulsing. She pressed her palm against it, grounding herself. A second hiss slithered through the dark, closer, reverberating like a cold breath grazing the stone. Elara whispered, "Roman, that's not human, is it?" Cassian answered instead, voice tight. If the circle awakened the second serpent, it may not be human anymore. Then a shape moved. Something vast and serpentine brushed against the water surface, sending ripples across the canal. Roman felt the temperature drop sharply, a chill creeping up his spine. "We need light," he hissed, "just for a second." Cassian shook his head violently. "Light will draw it. It hunts by echoes and heat." Elara swallowed hard. "Then how do we get out?" Cassian pointed ahead. "There's a ladder to the right, metal, leads to the old maintenance hatch." Roman clasped Elara's wrist. "Follow my movements exactly. Don't run. Don't breath too loud." They moved slowly, painfully slowly, hands brushing the cold wall as guide. The hiss behind them thickened, followed by a heavy dragging sound. Something massive slithered across the stone floor. Cassian kept one hand near his blade, but knew it would be futile. Steel meant little against whatever ancient ritual had formed this creature. As they neared the ladder, a faint glow, moonlight through a grate, illuminated the water ahead. Roman exhaled. "There! Quiet!" A splash behind them, loud, sudden. Elara yelped before she could stop herself. That was all it took. The hiss sharpened to a guttural roar as a monstrous silhouette surged forward. Roman didn't wait. He shoved Elara up the ladder. "Climb, now!" Cassian threw himself sideways as a massive coil struck the ground where he had stood. Stone cracked. Dust exploded. Roman fired blindly into the dark. One shot, 2, 3, screeches erupted, metallic and furious, as the bullets ricocheted off something armored. Cassian shouted, "Roman, move!" The creature lunged again. Roman rolled across the wet stone, barely avoiding a sweeping tail or appendage, too fast to fully see. The air distorted around it, as though shadows bent at its command. Elara reached the grate first. It was bolted shut. "Roman, it's locked!" she cried, tugging desperately. Roman scrambled up the ladder, voice ragged. "Cassian, distract it!" Cassian gave a thin, humorless smile. "Gladly!" He leapt to the opposite platform and whistled sharply, an old rhythmic note. The monstrous form twisted toward the sound immediately, hissing in fury. Elara strained against the rusted bolt. "Come on, come on!" Roman reached her side and slammed his shoulder into the grate. "Move back!" He struck it again, and again. Rust cracked, metal bent. The creature shrieked, a sound so piercing Elara covered her ears. Cassian dodged another lunging strike, but slower this time, his breath labored. Roman could see the shadows closing around him like living tendrils. "Cassian!" Roman shouted. Cassian didn't look back. "Open it!" With one final heave, the grate ripped free, clattering against the street above. Moonlight flooded the ladder well. "Elara, go!" She climbed through. Roman followed, then paused. Cassian was still below, blade drawn, crouched like a cornered wolf. "Cassian, move!" Roman pleaded. Cassian met his gaze, eyes steady, accepting. "If I climb, it'll take both of us. If I stay, only one." Roman shook his head violently. "No, I'm not leaving you," Cassian smirked. "You'll have to. She needs you, and the box." The creature reared up behind him, its shadow stretching impossibly tall against the tunnel wall. Cassian hurled his blade toward Roman. "Find the vault! Stop them!" "Elara!" Roman roared. "Pull me up!" Elara grabbed Roman's coat and hauled. Roman's fingers scraped against the ladder rungs as Cassian vanished beneath a coiling mass of darkness. and the tunnel lit with a blinding white flash. As Cassian ignited the emergency flare from his belt, shoving it into the creature's maw. A deafening screech tore through the chamber. Roman was dragged onto the street just as the explosion of light and heat erupted below, sending dust and smoke pouring from the grate. Ilara sobbed, grabbing Roman's arm. "Cassian, did he? Roman stared at the smoking grate, heart breaking silently. He bought us time. Below, the hissing faded. But Roman knew nothing was over. Not yet. Footsteps echoed down the alley. Slow, controlled, human. From the shadows stepped the Whisper, silent mask glowing faintly under the moon, blade dripping with soot but otherwise untouched. Roman's blood froze. Ilara whispered, voice trembling, "He survived that?" The Whisper tilted his head, studying them both. Roman realized with horror the Whisper had not come to kill, not yet. He had come to reclaim what Cassian had protected with his life, the brass box. Roman stood slowly, shielding Ilara. The Whisper raised one gloved hand, not to strike, but in a chilling gesture of invitation, as if offering them one final chance to surrender. Roman whispered to Ilara without taking his eyes off their hunter, "Run on my count." The Whisper took a single step forward. Roman breathed. 3. Ilara tightened her grip. 2. The Whisper readied his blade. 1. Chapter 10. The Serpent's End. Moonlight shimmered off the wet cobblestones of the old district. As Roman and Ilara ran, the brass box heavy between them, their breaths came in ragged gasps, each step threatening to betray their position to the Whisper, whose silent pursuit pressed ever closer. Every shadow seemed to bend and twist, forming impossible shapes, shapes Roman had learned to recognize as illusions, tricks designed to unnerve, disorient, and slow their flight. "Where now?" Ilara panted, clutching the box to her chest as if it contained the very heart of the city. Roman scanned the street ahead. The river gate, the old dockyard, loomed as a faint silhouette against the night sky. "The coordinates in the journal. The vault your father marked. It's there. If we can reach it, we finally have a chance." Cassian's sacrifice echoed in Roman's mind, a grim reminder that the Whisper had already proven lethal. But there was no time for mourning. Every second lost was a second closer to being cornered. A distant metallic scrape sounded behind them. The Whisper's presence was unmistakable. Roman glanced back, through the alleyways, through broken windows, through moonlit gaps in the buildings, and felt the oppressive inevitability of pursuit. "We have to split up," Roman whispered. "I'll lead him away. You take the box to the vault." Ilara's hands tightened around the box. "No, we do this together." Roman shook his head. "It's too dangerous. He won't stop. But you can reach the vault. Cassian gave us a chance. Don't waste it." Ilara hesitated, fear and determination warring in her eyes. Finally, she nodded. "Go. I'll see you inside." Roman veered left into a narrow alley, shouts echoing behind him as the Whisper accelerated. Every stride Roman took was calculated to mislead, to draw the predator away from Ilara. He could hear the faint hiss, the scraping of steel, the heavy thrum of breathing, or was it mechanical, behind him. Meanwhile, Ilara ducked through the shadows toward the river gate. The brass box pulsed faintly, almost guiding her steps. She reached the dockyard and paused. There, half buried beneath old crates and waterlogged barrels, was the hatch, marked with the serpent insignia and the crescent moon etched into the metal by her father decades ago. Roman appeared at the edge of the alley, the Whisper mere steps behind. Roman didn't hesitate. He dove into the fight of shadows, striking, with makeshift steel rods from construction debris, dodging coiling strikes and using every ounce of his agility to misdirect the Whisper. At the dockyard, Ilara forced the hatch open. Water seeped into the chamber beneath, but the space was stable. She descended, every heartbeat echoing like a drum. The brass box in her hands vibrated subtly, as if resonating with the chamber itself. Below, the vault revealed itself. Ancient stone walls, shelves lined with old ledgers, artifacts and relics of Ceylonese origin. The brass box seemed to hum in response to the room, almost guiding Ilara to a pedestal carved in serpentine patterns. She placed the box atop the pedestal. Symbols glowed faintly, responding to the touch of her father's artifact. Slowly, the box began to open, hinges creaking as it revealed its contents. A collection of letters, maps, and a thin crystal vial containing a liquid of deep blue, an essence harvested from the rare sapphire of Ceylon. Ilara's eyes widened. This was what he protected all these years. Roman burst through the hatch behind her, breathless but alive. "Is it secure?" Ilara nodded. "For now." Then a sudden sound froze them both. The Whisper had reached the dockyard. His footsteps were deliberate, echoing against the water and crates. He paused at the edge of the chamber, surveying them. "You've done well to survive this far," he said, his voice low, masked, unnatural. "But the serpent never sleeps." Roman stepped forward, placing himself between Ilara and the Whisper. "It's over. Whatever you are, whatever the circle wanted, it ends here." The Whisper tilted his head. "You misunderstand. The circle is eternal. The Whisper is eternal. You cannot stop us with mortal hands." Ilara, clutching the vial, spoke with quiet authority. "Then we'll stop you with the truth." With deliberate hands, she lifted the vial and let it spill across the chamber floor. The liquid shimmered and glowed, seeping into the stone cracks. A strange resonance filled the chamber, vibrating through the walls. The Whisper hissed in pain or rage, Ilara could not tell, and recoiled. Roman took the moment to rush forward, grabbing the Whisper's wrist. The creature's strength was overwhelming, but the strange liquid seemed to weaken it. Its mask cracked slightly, revealing a human eye, frenzied, fearful. Ilara raised her voice. "Your time is over. The circle is exposed. Your secrecy ends tonight." The Whisper shrieked, a sound that shook the stone vault, and for a moment Roman thought the ceiling would collapse. But the resonance of the sapphire and the brass box's ancient magic created a barrier. The creature writhed, then, with a final hiss, recoiled and sank into the shadows from which it had emerged. Silence fell. Roman sank to the floor, breathing heavily. Ilara knelt beside him, still clutching the now empty vial. The brass box rested quietly, inert, its secrets finally laid bare. Cassian's sacrifice, Holden's warning, the long chase through alleys and sewers, it had all led here. Ilara opened the letters from the box. They detailed the circle's operations, names, and locations. A blueprint for dismantling the secretive, centuries-old syndicate. Her father's journal had been a map, not just of places, but of truth. Roman smiled faintly. "He planned for this. He trusted you." Ilara nodded, a mixture of grief and determination etched on her face. "And now it's our turn to finish it. The circle cannot survive exposure." A faint creak echoed from above. The hatch, but the street was empty. For the first time in weeks, they were alone. Roman rose, brushing dust from his coat. "We survived the hunt, but the war against the circle is only beginning. Now, we have the means to end it." Ilara stood, holding the brass box like a torch against the dark. "Together." Roman nodded. "Together." And for the first time, as moonlight glimmered off the flooded vault, and shadows receded into corners. They felt the weight of victory, tempered by the memory of those who had paid the ultimate price. Above them, the city slept, unaware of the serpent that had been vanquished beneath its streets.